Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development. Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development suggests that intelligence changes as children grow. A child's cognitive development is not just about acquiring knowledge. The child has to develop or construct a mental model of the world. Cognitive development occurs through the interaction of innate capacities and environmental events, and children pass through a series of stages. Piaget's theory of cognitive development proposes four stages of development. First, we have sensomotor stage, birth 2 to 2 years. The sensomotor stage is the first stage of your child's life according to Jean Piaget's theory of child development. It begins at birth and lasts through age 2. And during this period, your little one learns about the world by using their senses to interact with their surroundings. The second one is pre-operational stage, 2 to 7 years. During this stage, children build on object permanence and continue to develop abstract mental processes. This means they can think about things beyond the physical world, such as things that happened in the past. The third one is concrete operational stage, 7 to 11 years. Thinking in this stage is characterized by logical operations such as conversation, reversibility, or classification, allowing logical reasoning. And the last one is formal operational stage, ages 12 and up. Begins at approximately age 12 and lasts into adulthood. As adolescents enter this stage, they gain ability to think in an abstract manner by manipulating ideas in their head, without any dependence on concrete manipulation. How Piaget developed the theory. Piaget was employed at the Binet Institute in the 1920s, where his job was to develop French versions of questions on English intelligence tests. He became intrigued with the reasons children gave for their wrong answers to the questions that required logical thinking. He believed that these incorrect answers revealed important differences between the thinking of adults and children. Piaget branched out on his own with a new set of assumptions about children's intelligence. First, children's intelligence differs from an adult's in quality rather than in quantity. This means that children reason or think differently from adults and see the world in different ways. Second one is children actively build up their knowledge about the world. They are not passive creatures waiting for someone to fill their heads with knowledge. The best way to understand reasoning was to see things from their point of view. Wanted to do was not to measure how well children could count, spell, or solve problems as a way of grading their IQ. What he was more interested in was the way in which fundamental concepts like the very idea of number, time, quantity, causality, justice, and so on emerged. Piaget studied children from infancy to adolescence using naturalistic observation of his own three babies and sometimes controlled observation too. From this, he wrote diary descriptions charting their development. Stages of cognitive development. Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development suggests that children move through four different stages of intellectual development, which reflect the increasing sophistication of children's thought. Each child goes through the stages in the same order, and child development is determined by biological maturation and interaction with the environment. At each stage of development, the child thinking is qualitatively different from the other stages. That is, each stage involves a different type of intelligence. These are the stages of cognitive development. You have sensory-motor stage, birth to 18 to 24 months, and the goal is object permanence. The second stage is pre-operational stage, 2 to 7 years old. The goal is symbolic thought. The third one is concrete operational stage, ages 7 to 11 years old, logical thought. That is the goal. And the last one is formal operational stage. The age is adolescence to adulthood. The goal is scientific reasoning. The sensory-motor stage. Ages birth to 2 years. The first stage is the sensory-motor stage, and during this stage the infant focuses on physical sensations and on learning to coordinate his body. Major characteristics of developmental stages. Changes. The infant learns about the world through their senses and through their actions, moving around and exploring its environment. During the sensory-motor stage, a range of cognitive abilities develop. These include object permanence, self-recognition. The child realizes that other people are separate from them. Deferred imitation and representational play. They relate to the emergence of the general symbolic function, which is the capacity to represent the world mentally. At about 8 months, the infant will understand the permanence of objects and that they will still exist even if they can see them, and the infant will search for them when they disappear. During this stage, the infant lives in the present. It does not yet have a mental picture of the world stored in its memory, therefore it does not have a sense of object permanence. If it if it cannot see something, then it does not exist. This is why you can hide a toy from an infant while it watches, but it will not search for the object once it's gone out of sight. The main achievement during this stage is object permanence. Knowing that an object still exists, even if it is hidden, it requires the ability to form a mental representation of the object. Towards the end of this stage, the general symbolic function begins to appear where children show in their play that they can use object to stand for another. Language starts to appear because they realize that words can be used to represent objects and feelings. The second one is the pre-operational stage, ages 2 to 7 years. The pre-operational stage is one of Piaget's intellectual development stages. It takes place between 2 and 7 years. At the beginning of this stage, the child does not use operations, so the thinking is influenced by the way things appear rather than logical reasoning. A child cannot conserve, which means that the child does not understand that quantity remains the same even if the appearance changes. Furthermore, the child is egocentric. He assumes that other people see the world as he does. This has been shown in the Three Mountains study. Major characteristics of developmental changes. Toddlers and young children acquire the ability to internally represent the world through language and mental imagery. During this stage, young children can think about the things symbolically. This is the ability to make one thing, such as a word or an object, stand for something other than itself. A child's thinking is dominated by how the world looks, not how the world is. It is not yet capable of logical or problem-solving type of thought. Moreover, the child has difficulties with class inclusions. He can classify objects but cannot include objects in subsets, which involves classify objects as belonging to two or more categories simultaneously. Infants at this stage also demonstrate animism. This is the tendency for the child to think that non-living objects, such as toys, have life and feelings like a person. The third one is the concrete operational stage, ages 7 to 11 years. By the beginning of the concrete operational stage, the child can use operations, a set of logical rules. So he can conserve quantities. He realizes that people see the world in a different way that he does decentering, and he has improved inclusion tasks. Children still have difficulties with abstract and thinking. Major characteristics and developmental changes. During this stage, children begin to think logically about concrete events. Children begin to understand the concept of conservation, understanding that although things may change in appearance, certain properties remain the same. During this stage, children can mentally reverse things, picture a ball of plasticine returning to its original shape. During this stage, children also become less egocentric and begin to think about how other people might think and feel. The stage is called concrete because children can think logically much more successfully if they can manipulate real concrete materials or pictures of them. Piaget considered the concrete stage a major stage no concrete stage a major turning point in child's cognitive development because it marks the beginning of logical or operational thought. This means the child can work things out internally in their head rather than physically try things out in the real world. The last one is the formal operational stage, ages 12 and over. The formal operational period begins at about age 11. As adolescents enter this stage, they gain the ability to think in an abstract manner, the ability to combine the classify items in a more sophisticated way, and the capacity for higher order reasoning. Adolescents can think systematically and reason about what might be as well as what is not everyone achieved this stage. This allows them to understand politics, ethics, and science fictions, as well as to engage in scientific reasoning. Adolescents can deal with abstract ideas. Example, they can understand divisions and fractions without having to actually divide things up. Solve hypothetical imaginary problems like that. Major characteristics and developmental changes. Concrete operational operations are carried out on things, whereas formal operations are carried out on ideas. Formal operational thought is entirely freed from physical and perceptual constraints. During this stage, adolescents can deal with abstract ideas, example no longer needing to think about slicing up cakes or sharing sweets to understand divisions and fractions. They can follow the form of an argument without having to think in terms of specific examples. Adolescents can deal with hypothetical problems with many possible solutions. Example, if asked what would happen if money were abolished in 1 hour's time, they could speculate about many possible consequences. From about 12 years, children can follow the form of a logical argument without reference to its content. During this time, people develop the ability to think about abstract concepts and logically test hypotheses. This stage sees emergence of scientific thinking, formulating abstract theories and hypotheses when faced with a problem.